My beloved child, I invite you to consider a transformative truth. What if the very shadow you have spent a lifetime fleeing is actually the sanctuary where the key to your liberation is kept? You have been standing outside yourself, watching the horizon, waiting for external doors to swing open. You have been praying for circumstances to shift, for broken relationships to mend themselves, or for a sudden harvest of provision to fall from the sky. But I tell you today, the fullness of the life I have meticulously prepared for you is not waiting for you out there. It is waiting in here within the sacred geography of your own soul. There is a specific chamber in the architecture of your heart that you have not yet dared to enter. And I am standing at the threshold of that room at this very moment. I am not here to force the door. I am not here to drag you into the darkness before you are ready to see the light. I am here to whisper a secret about what lies behind that heavy wood. It is not the nightmare you have imagined. What lives in that forgotten room is not a monster waiting to devour you. It is a wound waiting to be seen. The injury you sustained was real. The pain was valid. But you must understand this divine distinction. The wound is not the wall. Today, I wish to speak to you about a different kind of healing. I am not speaking of the superficial restoration that merely glazes over the surface. I am not interested in the kind of peace that seals a cut while the infection still pulses beneath the skin. The healing I offer reaches into the very foundation of your being. It enters the rooms you built behind bolted locks. It penetrates the barricades you constructed to keep the agony contained. I work from the inside out. Think of a master builder. A true craftsman does not simply patch a crack in the plaster. He understands the stress points of the foundation. He knows exactly where the structural integrity began to fail. I have watched you build your walls, child. I saw you lay them down carefully, deliberately, brick by brick. And I know that every single brick has a name. There is the brick of remorse, the echoes of things said to you that lodged in your spirit like a splinter too deep to reach. No matter how often you revisited the memory, hoping to finally pull it free, it only seemed to burrow deeper. There is the brick of betrayal, the heavy stone laid the moment you realized the person meant to be your sanctuary was either unable or unwilling to protect you. There is the brick of vulnerability. Denied the time you offered the softest parts of your heart, only to be met with the cold steel of judgment. In that quiet, devastating moment, you made a silent vow to the universe. Never again. You decided that safety was found in silence, and you began to build higher. There is the brick of swallowed grief, the sorrow you had to choke down because there was no safe harbor for your tears. Perhaps the timing was wrong, or the people around you were too fragile, or the magnitude of the loss seemed too vast for the world to comprehend. So you buried it. There is the brick of the shattered expectation, the death of a dream you were too weary to defend. And perhaps the most painful stone of all, the version of yourself that you stopped believing in because too many voices of authority told you that your soul wasn't worth the investment of faith. Hear me clearly. I do not condemn the building of these walls. I understand the necessity of your fortifications. I know what it is like to watch my children learn, through a series of agonizing lessons that the world is not always a sanctuary. I know that love can be fickle, and that promises are often made of glass. To reduce the surface area of your exposure to pain was not a failure of your spirit. It was an act of survival. You did the best you could with the materials you had. When all you have is a pile of bricks and a heart full of hurt, you build a wall. That is a form of wisdom, a protective instinct, birthed in an unreasonable season. But child, the walls that once served as your armor have now become your prison. They are no longer just keeping the intruders out, they are keeping the glory in. Behind that locked door, hidden under the weight of those bricks, is not just your pain, waiting for someone trustworthy enough to sit with it. Your pain has grown lonely, but also trapped in that room is your capacity for ecstatic joy. Your ability to receive a love that doesn't require you to brace for the impact of its departure. Your freedom to dream without the low protective ceiling of realistic expectations you installed to avoid disappointment. Deep within that room is the original blueprint of who you were designed to be, the version of you that existed before the world began its carvings. The wound is real, but the wound is not the wall. I am asking to become your architect. I do not come with a wrecking ball to demolish your history that would be a re-injury, not a restoration. I come to walk through the ruins with you, slowly. I want to place my hand against every cold stone and listen to its story. I want to understand what each room was meant to hold and what it is burdened with now. I am not repulsed by what the inspection reveals. I am not alarmed by the years of accumulated dust or the layers of structural damage. I look at the totality of your history and I say, this is workable. This is beautiful. This is exactly why I came. This is where the true glory begins. Every divine healing starts with a radical, honest look at the architecture as it stands. No more sanitized versions. No more managing the curb appeal of your interior life for the sake of others. I want the actual structure. The places that still throb when brushed. The memories that surface without an invitation. The emotions that feel too big for the present moment. When you react with intensity today, it is often just the echo of a wound from yesterday that was never allowed to heal. Those patterns, how you relate to people, how you treat yourself, how you even perceive. My love, are often just the shapes your soul took to fit inside the walls you built. I want to walk into all of it with you, not to expose you, but to liberate you, to show you that beneath the debris, your capacity to love, your hunger for beauty, and your resilience have not been extinguished. They are merely dormant, waiting for the light to return. Let us go deeper. To go deeper into the sanctuary of your soul, we must speak with absolute honesty about the price of restoration. I will not offer you a version of healing that is merely a soothing balm for a weekend. I offer you a total metamorphosis of your interior landscape, and that metamorphosis requires a radical shift in how you relate to your own humanity. The first requirement of true healing is the cessation of the flight. You must stop running from what you feel. I am not giving you a religious command to indulge every whim of the ego or to let every fleeting emotion dictate your direction. No, this is an invitation to a much more sacred discipline, to stop treating your own heart as a crime scene that must be cordoned off. You have treated your emotions as if they were wild, uncontrollable fires that threaten to consume the very house you live in. You have spent decades as a tireless firefighter, working day and night to contain the blaze, to suppress the smoke, and to hide the heat from anyone who might be alarmed by its intensity. But you were not designed to be a container for stagnant energy. Feelings were never meant to be stored. They were designed to be experienced. They are messengers, traveling through the corridors of your being to deliver vital information about your boundaries, your desires, and your needs. When a feeling is allowed to do its natural work, it rises to the surface, delivers its truth, and then dissipates, leaving you more spacious than before. When you consistently deny these messengers entry, they do not simply vanish into the ether. They do not evaporate because you chose to ignore them. Instead, they build a silent, invisible pressure within the marrow of your bones. They find alternative routes to make themselves known. Have you wondered why you feel that inexplicable irritability? Why a simple question from a loved one feels like an intrusion that triggers a sharp edge in your voice? That is the leak. That is the pressure of 10 years of unexpressed sorrow finding a crack in your armor. Have you wondered why you carry a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep can touch? It is because you are spending 80% of your vital life force just keeping the doors of your internal rooms bolted shut. It takes an enormous amount of spiritual and physical energy to pretend you are fine when a hurricane is raging in your basement. The wound is real, but the wound is not the wall. I am asking to become your architect. I do not come with a wrecking ball to demolish your history that would be a re-injury, not a restoration. I come to walk through the ruins with you, slowly. I want to place my hand against every cold stone and listen to its story. I want to understand what each room was meant to hold and what it is burdened with now. I am not repulsed by what the inspection reveals. I am not alarmed by the years of accumulated dust or the layers of structural damage. I look at the totality of your history and I say, this is workable. This is beautiful. This is exactly why I came. This is where the true glory begins. Every divine healing starts with a radical, honest look at the architecture as it stands. No more sanitized versions. No more managing the curb appeal of your interior life for the sake of others. I want the actual structure. The places that still throb when brushed. The memories that surface without an invitation. The emotions that feel too big for the present moment. When you react with intensity today, it is often just the echo of a wound from yesterday that was never allowed to heal. Those patterns, how you relate to people, how you treat yourself, how you even perceive. My love, are often just the shapes your soul took to fit inside the walls you built. I want to walk into all of it with you, not to expose you, but to liberate you, to show you that beneath the debris, your capacity to love, your hunger for beauty, and your resilience have not been extinguished. They are merely dormant, waiting for the light to return. Let us go deeper. To go deeper into the sanctuary of your soul, we must speak with absolute honesty about the price of restoration. I will not offer you a version of healing that is merely a soothing balm for a weekend. I offer you a total metamorphosis of your interior landscape, And that metamorphosis requires a radical shift in how you relate to your own humanity. The first requirement of true healing is the cessation of the flight. You must stop running from what you feel. I am not giving you a religious command to indulge every whim of the ego or to let every fleeting emotion dictate your direction. No, this is an invitation to a much more sacred discipline, to stop treating your own heart as a crime scene that must be cordoned off. You have treated your emotions as if they were wild, uncontrollable fires that threaten to consume the very house you live in. You have spent decades as a tireless firefighter, working day and night to contain the blaze, to suppress the smoke, and to hide the heat from anyone who might be alarmed by its intensity. But you were not designed to be a container for stagnant energy. Feelings were never meant to be stored. They were designed to be experienced. They are messengers, traveling through the corridors of your being to deliver vital information about your boundaries, your desires, and your needs. When a feeling is allowed to do its natural work, it rises to the surface, delivers its truth, and then dissipates, leaving you more spacious than before. When you consistently deny these messengers entry, they do not simply vanish into the ether. They do not evaporate because you chose to ignore them. Instead, they build a silent, invisible pressure within the marrow of your bones. They find alternative routes to make themselves known. Have you wondered why you feel that inexplicable irritability? Why a simple question from a loved one feels like an intrusion that triggers a sharp edge in your voice? That is the leak. That is the pressure of 10 years of unexpressed sorrow finding a crack in your armor. Have you wondered why you carry a bone-deep exhaustion that no amount of sleep can touch? It is because you are spending 80% of your vital life force just keeping the doors of your internal rooms bolted shut. It takes an enormous amount of spiritual and physical energy to pretend you are fine when a hurricane is raging in your basement. This containment eventually leads to a gray flatness, a numbness where color once lived. You have turned down the volume on your pain so effectively that you have accidentally turned down the volume on your joy as well. You cannot selectively numb the soul. When you shut out the darkness, you inevitably dim the light. This is why the inexplicable sadness arrives on a Tuesday afternoon without a trigger. It is simply the soul's way of saying, I have been carrying this too long. Please let me feel this so I can finally let it go. I am not asking you to open every floodgate at once. That would not be restoration. That would be a deluge that could overwhelm your current foundation. I am asking you to sit with me in the safety of my presence and allow one room at a time to breathe. Let the feelings deliver their information. Let the tears be the rain that washes the dust from the windows of your spirit. The second requirement of healing is the audit of the narrative. We must revisit the stories you have told yourself about why things happened. I am not here to rewrite the facts. The pain was real. The betrayal happened. The loss was absolute. But I am here to challenge the conclusions you drew from those facts in the moments of your greatest wounding. When you were a child, or when you were in the middle of a devastating season, you didn't have the perspective of the divine. You made the best meaning you could with the limited resources you had. But many of those meanings are lies masquerading as self-protection. You concluded that you are fundamentally hard to love, You drew this conclusion from a biased sample size. You looked at the 3 or 4 people in your life who were incapable of giving you what you needed, and you decided their inability was actually your inadequacy. You decided that because they could not see your value, you must not have any. You concluded that vulnerability is a direct path to harm. This was a logical deduction based on a painful experience, but it is not a universal truth. It does not account for the reality of safe intimacy or the beauty of being truly seen by someone who carries my heart. You concluded that you must earn your place through constant performance. You built a life around being the smartest, the strongest, the most helpful, or the most invisible, because you believed love was a wage to be earned rather than a gift to be received. This is the architecture of conditional love, and it is a crumbling foundation. Healing requires us to look at these stories in the light of my wider truth. It requires the patience to inhabit the unfinished space, that uncomfortable territory between the wounding and the full restoration. I know you want to rush through it. I know you want the quick fix, the miracle that bypasses the work. But a wound that heals too fast on the surface will always reopen under pressure. The healing I am doing in you is cellular. It is slow because it is thorough. Trust the pace of the one who knows how to build things that last for eternity. Let us now enter the room of your worth. This is the most heavily modified space in your entire interior life. For many of you, this room is unrecognizable from its original design. The messages you received about your value arrived far too early, before you had the intellectual or spiritual armor to deflect them. They were absorbed into the very wood and stone of your identity. Some of you were told, through words, or through the crushing silence of neglect, that you were a burden. You learned that having needs was an inconvenience to the people you depended on. So, you renovated your room of worth to be as small and unobtrusive as possible. You decided that the best version of you was the one that required nothing from anyone. Some of you were told that your value was tied to the trophies on your shelf or the grades on your paper. You learned that you were tolerated when you failed and celebrated only when you exceeded expectations. So, you filled your room of worth with the clutter of achievement, leaving no space for your actual self to sit down and rest. Some of you were told that the most essential parts of your design, your sensitivity, your specific way of seeing the world, your unique temperament were too much or not enough. You were forced to hide the parts of you that didn't fit into the narrow boxes provided by your environment. I want you to see what I see when I look into this room. I see a diamond that has been buried in dark ground. Does the diamond lose its value because it has spent a century in the dirt? Does the pressure of the earth change its chemical composition? No, it remains a diamond. Its worth is intrinsic. It was decided the moment it was formed. Your worth was assigned to you by my hand before the foundations of the world were laid. It is not a fluctuating currency. It does not go up when you are good, and it does not plummet when you are broken. It simply is. It is the worth of something made in my image. I am here to tear down the interior walls that were built by voices that had no authority to speak over you. I am here to remove the performance clutter. I want to restore the original dimensions of your worth. A room so wide and so high that you can finally stand up straight without hitting your head on the ceiling of someone else's expectations. The wound was real, but it is not the wall. And the wall is not the foundation. Let the renovation continue. Let us move deeper into the labyrinth of your interior world. We now approach a door that feels heavier than the others, one that emits a cold, damp resonance. This is the chamber of self-condemnation. For most of you, this room is the most densely furnished space in your entire soul. It is crowded with the heavy, leaden furniture of guilt and the sharp-edged fixtures of shame. It is the place where the internal prosecutor lives, that relentless voice that takes a genuine mistake and uses it to construct a permanent verdict about your fundamental character. Self-condemnation is a master of distortion. It does not say, "I made a choice that was out of alignment with my truth." Instead, it roars, "I am a mistake. I am constitutionally flawed. I am a failure, and I always will be." It looks at a momentary lapse in judgment and presents it as the ultimate evidence of a corrupt nature. It whispers that the current struggle is just a confirmation of a sentence that was passed long before you were even born. I need you to listen to my voice with every fiber of your being right now. That voice of condemnation is not mine. There is a vital distinction you must learn to make if you are to survive this journey toward wholeness. There is a voice of divine conviction. This is a gentle yet firm nudge that says, "Child, this action is beneath you. This choice is not a reflection of who I made you to be. Here is the path back to alignment. Here is how we mend what was broken." This voice always arrives with a map. It always brings a sense of direction and the assurance that I am walking beside you in the correction. It is an act of supreme love. But the voice of condemnation, the one that says you are irredeemable, that you have exhausted the supply of grace, that you have too much history for restoration to reach you, that voice is a thief. It is a liar. It is a parasite that feeds on your potential. It does not want to correct you. It wants to bury you. It drives you away from the only source capable of providing the medicine you need. Consider the sacrifice made upon the cross, the ultimate act of divine alchemy. That gesture was not offered to a sanitized version of you. It wasn't a down payment on a future perfect version of your life that had finally managed to get its act together. No, the price was paid for you exactly as you are in the ruins. When the sacrifice was made, every single failure of yours was already visible. Every future moment of wandering, every time you would choose the shadow over the light, every hidden sin you are too ashamed to even name all of it, was held in the awareness of the one who said, "You are worth it anyway." The cost was not a surprise. There was no fine print that emerged later that would have changed the decision. Your worth to me far exceeds any calculation based on your performance. It is a pure, unadulterated gift. I am asking you to let the weight of self-punishment begin to lift. We are not going to pretend the failures didn't happen. That would be a shallow healing built on a foundation of sand. we are going to place those failures into the only ocean large enough to dissolve them, the infinite mercy of the divine. Now, let us turn to the room of unprocessed grief. This is perhaps the most silent room in your soul, but its silence is heavy. It holds the weight of every loss you were never permitted to mourn. The world has a very narrow window for what it considers valid grief. It recognizes death and perhaps divorce, but it often ignores the slow deaths that happen in the shadows. There is the grief of the stolen childhood. You may not have a single dramatic trauma to point to, but you carry the weight of an atmosphere that was missing something essential. You carry the sorrow of the child who had to grow up too fast, who had to become the anchor for parents who were adrift, who never felt the simple, uncomplicated safety of being small. There is the grief of the divergent life. You carry a version of yourself in your imagination. The one who would have been a dancer, the one who would have lived in a different city, the one who would have married for love instead of security. The gap between that imagined life and your actual life is a loss that deserves a funeral, but you have never given it one. There is the grief of the faded connection, the relationships that didn't end with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing erosion. The people you can no longer reach across the vast distance that time and silence have created. And there is the grief of the setting down. The parts of your own soul you had to abandon because the environment you lived in could not hold them. The creative fire you smothered so you could pay the bills. The longing for adventure you traded for the safety of the predictable. Unprocessed grief is like a stone in the belly. It is invisible, but it makes every step harder. Because the world expects you to move on according to a social timeline, you have learned to store this grief in a locked container. But grief does not evaporate. It does not have an expiration date. It sits in that dark room, waiting for someone trustworthy enough to finally let it speak. I am giving you permission, right here and now, to grieve. Do not fear that if you open the floodgates of your sorrow, you will be swept away forever. Do not fear that if you finally acknowledge the magnitude of what you lost, you will be left hollow and depleted. That is a lie the walls tell you to keep themselves standing. What I have seen in every soul that has brought its grief into my presence is this. On the other side of processed grief is not emptiness, but spaciousness. When you allow the tears to move through you, they clear out the debris. They wash away the stagnant energy that was taking up all the square footage of your heart. When the grieving is complete, the room that was once tightly packed with sorrow becomes a room with room in it. Room for a joy that is no longer a performance. Room for a connection that is no longer managed. Room for a hope that can finally reach toward the sun without the fear of being crushed. Beneath the weight of that grief, your true self has been waiting patiently. Like a seed beneath the winter snow, it has survived everything that was thrown at it. It is more resilient than you know, and it is ready to bloom. Every tear you have ever shed in the dark has been caught by my hand. Not one was wasted. Not one loss was too small to matter to me. I am the God of the brokenhearted, and I am here to tell you that the wound was real, but the wound is not the wall. Let us clear the space. Let the healing rain fall. We move now into a chamber that is perhaps the most delicate of all. It is the Hall of Reflections, the place where your image of yourself is stored. In the center of this room stands a mirror. But I must warn you, this mirror is not an instrument of truth. For many of you, the mirror in this wounded room has been showing you a reflection shaped by every voice that ever spoke diminishment over your name. It has been calibrated by every experience that challenged your belief in your own capacity. It is a mirror, warped by the heat of old fires and the frost of old rejections. This mirror was not made by me. It was fashioned from the fragments of other people's limitations. It was silvered with the judgments of those who could not see their own light, and therefore could not recognize yours. It shows you a version of yourself that is filtered through the not enoughness of your past. It magnifies the scars and hides the soul. It focuses on the failures and ignores the miraculous persistence that brought you to this very moment. I want to tell you what I see when I look at you. My gaze is not filtered through the distortion of human wounding. I do not look at you through the lens of your history. I look at you from the perspective of the eternal now, where the original blueprint of your soul is always visible, untouched, and untarnished. When I look at you, the first thing I see is persistence. The world might call it survival, but I call it a holy tenacity. I see someone who is still standing after seasons that should have leveled the foundation. I see the quiet, fierce strength that held on when the winds of disappointment were strong enough to uproot trees. I see the times you felt as though you were breaking. And yet, underneath the fracture, there was a core of celestial material that refused to give way. That persistence is not a small thing. It is the signature of my handiwork within you. It is evidence that something I placed in you is far more resilient than the circumstances that have attacked it. You are still here, still reaching, still asking the deep questions, and still longing for the light. That reaching is a form of worship that moves the very heart of the divine. I see a beauty that the wounds could not touch. This is not a hollow flattery designed to make you feel better about a difficult day. This is a cold, hard, spiritual fact. There is a frequency of being that belongs only to you. There is a specific texture to your compassion, a unique geometry to your mind, and a singular vibration in your laughter. These things were not canceled by what happened to you. They were not deleted by the betrayals or the losses. They were simply occluded, covered up like a masterpiece in a dusty attic. The work we are doing together is not the creation of beauty, but the excavation of it. We are removing the layers of soot and shame to reveal the irreducible quality of who you are. Your specific configuration of gifts, the way you solve problems, the way you carry presence into a room, the way you notice the details others miss, these are intentional strokes of the Creator's brush. They were placed in you for a purpose that only you can fulfill. And that purpose is not on hold until you are perfect. It is active even now, in the middle of your restoration. Now, let us turn our attention toward the people you carry. I know the weight you bear for those you love. I know the names you whisper in the quiet hours of the night. Your children, your partners, your parents, your siblings, the ones who are lost, the ones who are struggling, and the ones who have built their own walls so high that you can no longer see them. You often fear that your prayers for them are dissolving into the air, that they are nothing more than echoes lost in the void. But I tell you, I keep a careful record of intercession. Every prayer you have breathed for the people in your life has been caught and cataloged. None of them have been filed away for later review. They are all currently in motion. Your love for them is a tether that allows my grace to reach into areas where they may not yet be able to invite me directly. I have stationed guardians around your home. This is not a metaphor. This is a description of a spiritual reality. Because the people who matter to you matter to me. I have placed protection around the boundaries of your life. I carry the concerns of your heart with the same intensity that you do, but with the added advantage of being the one who holds the keys to every heart and every door. Trust me with the outcomes of the lives you love. You were designed to be a conduit of love for them, not the architect of their destiny. Your role is presence, prayer, and a love that does not manipulate. The heavy lifting of their transformation belongs to me. When you release that weight to me, you actually become a more effective instrument of blessing because you are no longer operating from a place of anxiety and control. As you heal, the atmosphere around you shifts. This is the most profound mystery of the interior work. Your healing is a gift to everyone you touch. You do not have to announce your process or demand that others acknowledge your changes. The natural radiation of a soul that is becoming whole is more powerful than any words you could speak. A person who is no longer organized around their wounds brings a different quality of presence into every interaction. The defensiveness that used to trigger conflict begins to soften because the tender place it was protecting is finally being tended by the divine. The withdrawal that used to create distance begins to ease because closeness is no longer perceived as a threat to a fragile interior. The peace that you are cultivating in the room of worth begins to leak out into your kitchen, your office, and your conversations. You are like a garden that is finally receiving the right care. You don't have to try to grow. Growth is the natural result of the right conditions. And as you flourish, the people in your shade begin to flourish as well. You are becoming a person who can hold space for others' pain because you have learned how to hold space for your own. You are becoming a living testimony that the wound was real, but the wound was not the wall. We now stand before the most complex chamber in the entire architecture of your spirit, the sanctuary of divine relationship. For many of you, this room carries a history that is layered with contradiction and deep-seated confusion. This is because the concepts of the divine of authority, of unconditional love, and of protection were first introduced to you through the imperfect vessel of human beings. Before you had the spiritual maturity or the intellectual discernment to separate the creator from the creature, the actions of those who raised you were imprinted onto your understanding of me. If the first authority figures in your life were harsh, you unknowingly developed an internal map of me as a harsh master. If they were distant, you assumed I was unreachable. If their love was conditional, only available when you performed well or stayed silent, then your entire spiritual life became a marathon of earning a grace that was already yours. You have been living in the gap between what your theology says is true and what your nervous system feels is true. You say, I am love, but you brace for my judgment. You say, I am a provider, but you live in the constant anxiety of lack. I am here to renovate this room with the light of direct encounter. I want to peel away the filters of your past. The version of me that was shaped by the limitations of wounded humans is not me. I am not an intermittent presence that appears only when you have achieved a certain level of spiritual purity. I am not a critical observer waiting for you to fail so I can withdraw my favor. I am consistently present. I am not only in the dramatic moments of your life, the mountain peaks of success, or the valleys of total despair. I am in the grocery store. I am in the traffic jam. I am in the mundane, repetitive tasks that make up the texture of your Tuesday afternoon. My interest in you is not tolerant observation. It is a profound, specific, and loving fascination with the person I have made. I am interested in what made you smile today, without you expecting it. I am interested in the specific quality of the worry that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. I am interested in the dreams you haven't even whispered to yourself yet because they feel too fragile to name. Let this room be cleared of the old, inherited frameworks. Let the direct experience of my unwavering peace be the new foundation. You do not need to perform for me. You do not need to audition for a role in my heart. You are already at the center of it. Now, let us speak of the truth of provision. There is a profound connection between the interior renovation we are doing and the external doors that are beginning to swing open. You have been praying for open doors in the world, for financial breakthroughs, for career opportunities, for resources to meet your needs. And I tell you, those doors are already in motion. But consider this. A person who receives a massive external blessing, but whose interior is still organized around wounds and walls, will struggle to hold what arrives. If your foundation is cracked by the fear of lack, you will mismanage the harvest. If your walls are built of self-doubt, you will hide from the very opportunity you prayed for. The healing of your self-understanding is not a preliminary step. It is the essential preparation. As we rebuild your interior capacity, we are creating the structural integrity necessary to hold the weight of the abundance I am bringing. Your financial needs are not a generic category to me. I know the exact numbers. I know the specific gaps in your accounts that are creating the most pressure. I know the timing of every bill and the weight of every debt. And I am working in those gaps with the resources of a kingdom that does not operate by the rules of scarcity. The provision may not arrive through the channel you are expecting. Often, I use the unexpected direction so that when it arrives, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was orchestrated by a love that sees you specifically. Trust the timing. Trust the sequence. Everything is being aligned for your flourishing. We must also address the strategy of the accuser. I want to speak with absolute clarity about the nature of the enemy of your soul. This force operates with a specific, calculated strategy. It does not attack at random. It attacks the wound. The accuser has studied the architecture of your walls. He knows which rooms are locked and what you have hidden inside them. His primary weapon is not power, for he has no real power over a child of the light. His weapon is deception. He comes with his accusations in the moments when you are most exhausted, because he knows that a tired spirit has less access to the truth. He speaks in a voice that sounds like your own internal monologue, replaying your failures without the context of your growth. He uses the voices of other wounded people to deliver judgments that reinforce your old stories of not being enough. But here is the immutable truth. The accuser cannot change what I have declared over you. He can confuse you about your identity, but he cannot delete it. He can make you feel as though you have lost your way, but he cannot remove the purpose I embedded in your DNA before you were born. Confusion is not the same as a loss of identity. You are who I say you are, regardless of the whispers in the dark. The strength I am building in you through this season is not the strength of hardness. I am not making you into someone who is numb to pain. That is a form of damage, not a form of power. I am building in you the strength of the deep root. I am making you like a tree planted by the water. You will still feel the wind. You will still experience the heat of the sun. But because your roots have traveled deep into the soil of my love, into the very rooms you used to avoid, you will not be uprooted. You will be able to bend without breaking. You will be able to grieve without despairing. You are being transformed from someone who survives into someone who occupies. You are beginning to occupy the full territory of your soul. The wound was real, but the wound is not the wall. And the wall, in my hands, is becoming the very material I use to build a monument to my faithfulness. The renovation is nearing completion. Can you feel the air beginning to move in the rooms that were once sealed? Can you see the light hitting the floors that haven't seen the sun in decades? Rest in this knowing. The builder is not only skilled, the builder is in love with the house. As the dust of the renovation begins to settle, and as the structural integrity of your soul is restored, we must speak of a quality that has been missing from your landscape for a very long time. We must speak of the resurrection of joy. I know that for many of you, joy has felt like a foreign language, a dialect spoken by others, but one you have forgotten how to translate. In the long, grueling seasons of your trial, your primary objective was survival. And survival is a grim business. It is a matter of endurance, of grit, of keeping your head above water. Joy in those seasons felt like an expensive luxury you could not afford, or worse, like a cruel mockery of your actual condition. But I want to offer you a divine distinction. Joy is not the same as happiness. Happiness is a bird of passage. It lands on your shoulder when the weather is fair and the circumstances are favorable. It is a response to the happenings of your life, the promotion, the praise, the absence of conflict. Because it is tied to the external, it is inherently fragile. It dissipates the moment the wind changes direction. Joy, however, is a subterranean river. It is a stationary, irreducible quality of the spirit. It is the quiet, steady overflow of a heart that knows it is held by the eternal. Joy is what remains when the happenings are stripped away. It is the ability to know in the marrow of your bones that the darkness does not have the final word, even when the darkness is all you can currently see. The dimming of joy in your life was not a sign of spiritual failure. It was the natural result of the burial. Under the weight of the grief you swallowed, under the debris of the dreams that shattered, and under the exhaustion of maintaining your walls, your joy was simply buried alive. It did not die. It cannot die, for it is part of my very nature, infused into your design. It has been waiting in the low light of those sealed rooms, surviving on the oxygen of your persistence. As we clear the rooms, the joy will begin to breathe again. You will find it returning not in a sudden, overwhelming explosion, but in the small resurrections of your daily life. It will be in the unexpected quality of light, hitting a glass of water on your table. It will be in a fragment of music that reaches a part of your heart you didn't know was still awake. It will be in the sudden, unbidden smile that catches you by surprise in the middle of an ordinary task. These are the signs that the gray flatness is thinning. The color is returning to your landscape. I am inviting you to notice these moments. Do not dismiss them as trivial. They are the heralds of your new season. They are the evidence that the mechanism of delight is being repaired. Now, let us speak of the mystery of tested faith. Your relationship with faith has become complicated through the years of silence and delay. I see the weariness in your spirit when people speak of easy faith or triumphant belief. You have lived in the gap between the promise and the fulfillment for so long that your faith has become weathered. I want you to know that I value weathered faith far more than polished faith. Polished faith is the belief of someone who has never been in the room behind the locked door. It is smooth, untested, and often shallow. But your faith is like an ancient stone that has been shaped by the rushing waters of 1,000 storms. It is jagged in places, yes. It carries the marks of your doubt, your anger, and your why. But it is real. It is the faith that kept reaching for my hand even when it felt like I had withdrawn it. It is the prayer that was whispered through clenched teeth when the evidence of your eyes screamed that I was absent. It is the white-knuckled grip on the hem of my garment when everything else was being swept away. I do not require you to perform a certainty you do not feel. I am not offended by your questions. I am not threatened by your doubt. Doubt is often just the shadow cast by a great longing for truth. I honor the mixture you carry, the love and the confusion coexisting in the same space. The foundation of faith I am rebuilding in you is not based on feeling certain. It is based on lived evidence. You are coming into a season of restored confidence. The kind that says, I know the builder is faithful because I have seen him work in the ruins. I know the love is real because I felt it when I had nothing left to offer. This is the faith that moves mountains not because it is strong, but because it is anchored. We are entering the season of the conduit. I have told you that the healing of your interior is a gift to those around you. But there is a deeper dimension to this. You are being prepared to be a source of comfort for those who are still behind their own locked doors. There are people in your future, some you have already met, and some who are yet to cross your path, who will encounter you at their moment of greatest wounding. They will look at you, and they will see someone who knows. They will sense a quality in your presence that they cannot find in those who have lived easy lives. Your history of wounding is not a liability to your calling. It is your credential. Your testimony will not be a before and after story that skips over the middle. Your testimony will be, I was broken. I was terrified. I built walls that I thought would protect me, but only ended up imprisoning me. And then, the builder came. He didn't judge the damage. He didn't rush the process. He sat with me in the dark until I was ready to see the light. And now, the rooms are open. That specific testimony carries a weight that can penetrate the hardest heart. You are becoming a wounded healer. Because you have been renovated, you know the layout of the hidden rooms in others. You can guide them through their own architecture with a compassion that is only born of shared experience. Final words over the out-of-order rooms. Imagine that building once more. The one that suffered the great structural event. The sign that said "out of order" is being taken down today. The yellow caution tape is being removed. The rooms are becoming habitable. You are entering a season of genuine flourishing. This is not the performance of success that the world admires. This is the peace of integration. It is the version of your life where your work, your relationships, your physical health, and your spirit are all beginning to vibrate at the same frequency. The frequency of the original design. The provision you have been waiting for is in transit. The doors you didn't even know existed are beginning to unlatch. The great thaw has begun in the relationships that were frozen in silence. The wound was real, but the wound is not the wall. You have moved from the season of survival into the season of occupation. Occupy your worth. Occupy your joy. Occupy the vast, beautiful territory of the soul I have restored to you. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. I began this work in you, and I am the one who is faithful to complete it. The blueprint was always beautiful. The house is finally coming home. Amen.